We are back somewhat in the building because we're not in person together. But my guy Triple B, Mickey, what's good, bro?
Hey, I am good. Coming off a great card last week. I know that you did well as well. So excited to dive into a much bigger scaled card here as we got like an official UFC card here. These fight nights are fun, but these can be even more fun here on these big main stage event kind of cards here.
Oh, absolutely, man. And you also get the public to influence a couple of lines that you can maybe find some value on some plays. I always like starting every conversation when it comes to a pay-per-view in particular with what's your level of excitement for this card, dude?
Yeah, I mean it's not like the craziest card we've seen out of all these big cards, but there's definitely some big marquee fights in here that I'm excited for sure. I think we got a couple title fights, but yeah, I'm excited for sure.
Yeah, man. I'm kind of in the same boat. I do feel like the underdog might be howling a lot on this card. A lot of dogs that I do like, which we'll dive into in just a second. Also, I think my favorite fighter in all of the UFC is Valentina Shevchenko. So having her on a card, I really get pumped up for. But I'm ready to rock and roll, dude. Are you?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's get into it.
All right, let's pull up the first fight we're gonna break down. And that is liangna versus Silvana Gomez. Uh, I don't have nothing on this fight in particular. I know that you're on this one, Mickey. One thing I want to say is I was on Silvana in her last fight, and she dropped Vanessa Demopoulos and then got caught in a submission. And it's something that left me a little sour, dude. So I'll let you take the floor on this one.
Yeah, I don't blame you. She's fought some decent fighters. Only two fights into the UFC of her career so far, but it's been against some good competition here. I think this is a bounce back spot for her. This is probably one of my favorite women's spots on this card. And women's UFC can definitely be a little intimidating because some of these fights can be just brutal to watch. But I like this spot a lot. She's lost her two first fights, both by sub and to the UFC, and I think that this is a spot where it's a must win, and I think she does get the win here. I like her matchup against Na here.
So you're on her. Is there a certain prop you're looking at for this one, or are you like just betting her straight up to win?
I'm taking her straight for about 2 units for anyone that wants to know like the unit size on it. But I don't like betting too often on the finishes in the MMA for women's MMA. So unless I really like the spot, like last week I had Blanchfield inside the distance, and that was plus 285. Loved that spot in a hit, but I don't feel comfortable laying any inside the distance or anything crazy on this one.
Yeah, I hear you on that. As I'm looking at some of the odds, consensus is that this fight is going to go over 1.5 rounds. You can find that at minus 130, minus 125 in certain places. So I hear you on that. And it's also, she's not too big of a favorite. You're not laying minus 300, minus 400 like we have a couple of other fighters on this card. So I'd probably side with you. I'm not playing this fight, but if I had to pick one, I would probably lean with the favorite, Silvana.
I like it. I like it.
Okay. So the next fight that we're gonna highlight is one that got moved to the main card. Actually, we'll get to that when we do dive into the main card. But I believe, Mickey, the next fight that we're gonna target is a massive favorite in Brandon Allen at minus 320, minus 340 at some places, going up against Jacob Malcoon. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of this one how my favorite fighter in the UFC is Valentina Shevchenko. My favorite male fighter in the UFC is Robert Whittaker. And this is Robert Whittaker's grappling coach. Robert Whittaker is going to be in the corner for one Jacob Malcoon. These are the kind of fights, Mickey, that I love. I know you're not so much of a prop guy and hunting finishes and hunting decision props. I'm all about that, especially when I have a big favorite. And this is a prime example of a fight that I would bet both sides, but bet them differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of times, like people, mistake that they don't see that you can get value out of both sides of it. You might like one fighter to win, but You were saying pre-show, there's kind of like paths of victories for both fighters of how they need to get this fight done or how they will most likely win the fight. I think that's where you can find a lot of value in it.
So Malcoon is I'm actually calling for the upset here. I like Jacob Malcoon if he doesn't get finished by Brandon Allen. I think this is a decision for Malcoon or a finish for Brandon Allen. Allen, questionable gas tank in the past when he fought Kyle Daukaus, lost that last round, and I thought it was a 10-8, but I'm also a big 10-8 guy, Mickey. I'm very, if I'm a judge, I'd be a judge that would get a lot of heat on Twitter. I'm a big 10-8 guy. Brandon Allen has some questionable defensive wrestling defense, and I think Malcoon, he's not exciting. He doesn't get finishes. 67% of his wins are by decision, and I think if you are on Malcoon, yeah, plus 255 is dope. And I could be getting a little greedy, like plus 255 on a pick is awesome. But I'm thinking this goes the distance, and Malcoon to win by decision, you can find at plus 700.
Yeah, that is a wide line. For me personally, I think Allen gets it done here, but I don't feel comfortable laying the minus 320 juice on this one. Maybe a parlay piece if you're like a big Allen fan, maybe you throw him in a parlay piece, but I wouldn't feel comfortable laying minus 320 in this fight because I do think Malcoon is, he's live in this one. I think he has it's not crazy to say he can win this fight.
No, I agree with you. And the fight to not go to distance is minus 200. So with you thinking that Allen could get it done, I would probably lean towards him getting it done inside the distance. So for me, I'm either betting Allen to win inside the distance, which you can find at minus 105. Much rather take that as opposed to minus 320. Dude, very rarely will you hear me pick a minus 300, minus 400 fighter to win outright on the money line. It's just something where I'm going to hunt for value. I'm going to fish for the value, and I much rather try to get some better odds that way. I want to say that you're kind of in the same boat in the sense of you think Allen could get him out early. So minus 105 as opposed to minus 320 is how I would lean. But I'm gonna go towards Malcoon to win by decision at plus 700. That's the play that I'm on. Obviously, if I'm on the decision, you could also take him at plus 255. I think he's a very, very live dog, is Jacob Malcoon.
Agreed. I think it's not a bad spot at all, especially if you're one of those guys that loves hunting the value, And that's the UFC is a sport where the value is there. It's like there every card you can find. There's always going to be some of those big plus money winners. It's just about finding them.
Yeah, dude, and I think it's also important to definitely shop the lines, right? Like yesterday, I was watching the hockey game. I know, just getting a little off track, but it's important to like shop for lines because Lindgren on the Rangers to score the first goal on one book was 36-1, and on the other book he was 66-1. That's a wide ass line there, right? And Malcoon in this example, you can find him at plus 600 in some places, and then 11-1 to win by decision too. So just important to, before you commit to one particular place, to definitely shop around.
For sure.
All right. Next up on the menu for us, I believe, is the main card. And I'm pumped for this main card, dude. This main card got there's some fighters on this main card that I think you could see headlining a fight night. I think you could see making some noise. I don't want to use the term superstar because that gets thrown around loosely, but this first one, Madalena at minus 155 against Ameeb. I am a little biased because in his debut, Jack Della was very nice to the boy. Bet him first round knockout, got it done in his debut. This is a fascinating matchup. I think both of these guys are very interesting. And this is another one, Mickey, that I feel very similar to the last fight we just broke down.
Yeah, I agree. But I can't agree more with what you were saying there too about the bright star. He's a bright young prospect. Madalena, I love him, man. I think he's a good striker. He's got good takedown defense. I think he has some pretty good scrambles, and I think he should be able to handle Ameeb in this one. I like that you can get him at only a minus 155. I don't think that's too juicy. I'm comfortable laying that, but I think there's also some other spots you can definitely hunt out in this one.
This is an example of a guy who this might be the last time we get him at a minus 155. I could see him
Exactly.
being a north of minus 250 next time we see him, minus 300. So you're getting some great value here. I think it's on the price. Ameeb has had a tougher road. He's fought Stolze, he's fought Rocco Martin, who's no longer in the UFC. Danny Roberts too, who is a fan favorite. So he's Sam Alvey too. He's been around a little bit. But to me, I really like Madalena. One of my favorite props on the card is him to win by knockout at plus 300. Similar to what I've been saying, I like to find the strength of the fighter and double down on the path to victory. So I think Jack Della, I always have an issue trying to pronounce that one, Mickey, to win by knockout is the side that I'm on. And if you're someone who, are you a take 3-4 favorites parlay kind of guy?
Occasionally, not too often. It kind of depends. It depends on the card, honestly, because a lot of times I think there's some live dogs in it, and then sometimes you got some cards where, it's going to be square and it's going to be pretty chalky. Of just those minus 300 guys are going to win their fights, and they'll probably win them pretty handily. So, if you can find that, I think then maybe get some value with that.
He's the reason why I say that is because I'm always looking for 4 or 5 fighters I'm super confident in. If I'm betting their props, I also feel like a somewhat kind of hedge is to take them to win outright anyway, like on the money line. He's a key parlay piece for me. And there's one other fight we'll get to in a little bit who, if I'm to use the daily fantasy analogy, if I'm doing multiple lineups or I have multiple parlay pieces, I think Jack Della is going to be in the majority of them. So I'm pretty heavy on Jack Della minus 155. I'll lay the juice. I feel super confident, and also at plus 300 to win by knockout is kind of the side that I'm on.
Agreed. I'm right there with you.
Okay, next up is a fight that got moved from the prelims to the main card because Bontarine was hospitalized, and now Manel Cap once again gets hosed off a card. This guy has had issues, and it sucks when it's like not your fault. It's the other side that either gets sick or gets injured, and then you have to reschedule. Now you're doing your weight cut again. But this is one that I am very excited about. It's Andre Fiallo, who I believe this is his 4th fight this year, going up against Jake Matthews, and I want you to start off this one. How do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, I mean, Fiallo's been able to have 4 fights this year simply because he's had so many first round finishes. He's came in and he's just been electric. He's been fun to watch. This one, it's crazy. It's crazy that he's fought 4 times already, and we're not even halfway through the year. And then you got Jake Matthews coming in as well. I don't think Jake Matthews is just going to be necessarily a pushover in this one. I'm sure everybody and their brother is probably betting on Fiallo in the knockout simply because they look at his past fights and say, well, he does it every time. Why isn't he not going to do it this time? It's been early round finishes every time. I personally don't have anything on this fight. I lean towards Fiallo probably getting it done. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Matthews, pull an upset here. If he can get out of that first round, that's when things can get a little wild, in my opinion.
You're absolutely right. And I think another issue that Jake Matthews has is being an international fighter fighting out of Australia. Not to get too political, but they've had some outrageous COVID restrictions out there. Him being able to get booked for fights. He hasn't fought since March of 2021, and he lost to Sean Brady, who now Brady, I believe, is 4-0 in the UFC. He's a top prospect in the 170. I am on the underdog here, dude, and I feel as if Matthews is being disrespected by the line. I think if Matthews was more active, he would have been the favorite at plus 125. Fiallo is catching a lot of the hype of the finishes, right? The first round finishes, and oh my god, you talk about big favorites. When he slept Baeza, it's one of the most devastating parlay pieces that got blown up. I was a big Miguel Baeza fan. I ran into him in Miami a couple of times. We have some mutual friends. He was like minus 320, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be a smash. And then Fiallo, of course, blew it up. But with Jake Matthews, right? we can't forget that this guy was a big prospect coming in. He's still very young. I think the time off, this is the classic, lengthy time off, 16 months against the guy fighting pretty much seems like every month. But I think Matthews the line is mispriced. I think if Matthews was more active, he would be the favorite in this fight. And maybe this could be something where you live bet Matthews after round one if Fiallo drops them once, or Fiallo clearly gets a 10-9 and has him in danger, because we also haven't seen Fiallo be tested.
Agreed. Yeah, I think the more we're talking about it and looking into it, the more I'm starting to just like Jake Matthews even more, because I think if he can survive this first round, I think that like he becomes a very live dog. We just haven't really been able to see Fiallo past that, and I think maybe even like a Matthews by decision. I'm trying to find that line right now, but I think that would probably be a decent line there. Yeah, I'm looking at it. I see like a plus 210 range there. I think that would probably be a pretty good value bet in my opinion.
No, absolutely. That's probably my official pick on this fight in particular. I would go Matthews by decision. You get that at plus 220, but he's also the underdog. So if you don't want to get too fancy, and maybe he does get a rear naked choke, we haven't seen Fiallo hit the ground. I know he's down in Sanford. He's a teammate of my good friend Jared Gordon down in Florida, and we just haven't seen it. So Jake Matthews, I just can't get out of my head how big of a prospect this guy was coming into the UFC. He fought the Leech too, who's a guy who got thrown at, who they threw Chimaev at him too. So he has a stronger strength of schedule. I just can't get over Jake Matthews being in the underdog. So I really like Jake by decision officially at plus 200. I took that earlier this week at plus 230. The line is moving down. And you also said the first round for Fiallo. Fiallo by knockout in the first round is plus 300. So that's very interesting as well, because I think that's the only path to victory for him.
I agree. I think if it gets out of there, that's where I think we start to worry about his gas tank, and maybe even just some panic set in from him, because once you start getting into those rounds that you have not been in, especially in the in your last fights, it's almost like, okay, I didn't expect to be here. Like it's just some shock factor of like, I couldn't get this guy out. What do I do now?
Nah, dude, that's spot on. That was perfect. Sometimes they enter, the second round. And it's like, damn, I just hit the stool for the first time in my last 4 fights. Like, what is happening? It's
Right.
uncharted territory. All right, next fight is a rematch of not only the greatest women's fight of all time. I think it's one of the best fights of all time. I was in Vegas for this. I went to 248. Thank God for this fight, dude, because the main event was Romero and Adesanya. But we got Zhang Weili versus Joanna Young Jacek. This is the rematch. The first thing that jumps off the page to me, Mickey, is this is the first time we see Joanna back since that fight.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that it's been that long. Honestly, it's I like Whaley, and I think there's going to be a lot of motivation coming, especially after watching. She had to have watched that Rose fight where she just came out and did nothing. She's coming off of a loss where it was a split decision to her. She probably felt that she should still be the champ, and then to see the belt get taken away from the person that just beat her because she did absolutely nothing, it's probably got her even more motivated. She's got to know that she's right there, ready to get back for a title fight. I think she's going to come out motivated. But like you said, this was a great fight the last time. Another split decision that we saw there. I think we're in for another great fight, though. I lean with Weili, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Dana White already came out and said that this is a number 1 contender fight, which is fascinating because Joanna, if I'm not mistaken, I think is on a 4-fight losing streak. Oh no, she beat Waterson in the middle of that, but she loses to Weili, split. She loses to Valentina, which she's fighting up a weight. It was 125. Valentina's beating everybody but Nunez in the UFC, which is not a bad thing to happen to you. But the one thing with Joanna is the layoff, dude. This is March of 2020 was the last time we saw her. It's June 2022. That's 15 months. No, 25 months since we've seen her.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Wei Li, or 26, whatever. My math is, I'm struggling right now with the math. But Wei Li, we've seen her more active. She's fought Rose twice. She's just been more active. And I think with it being a 3-round fight, it's going to benefit Wei Li more. She's the better athlete. She's more active. She's more explosive. I think she's better everywhere. Minus 160 for Wei Li, I think, is a mistake. I think she should be a bigger favorite. I think this is one of those situations where you were talking about early on with you get a lot of public money and attention on these pay-per-views, and maybe the Joanna name to the casual is like, oh, she was the dominant champion before Rose ran into her and altered her career, kind of. I think Wei Li is being undervalued here, and I love this spot for Wei Li at minus 160.
Yeah, the man in the back was asking about Joanna and her forehead. But yeah, that's something that a lot of people, the picture that comes to mind when they think of her. That fight was absolutely insane, where she got those hematomas on her head, and she just looked like an alien almost. I don't know if we've seen anything that crazy in this fight, but I do think, like you said, she's going to be more active. She's going to be she's, even if it's like not a lot of damage, I could just definitely see Wei Li just the more volume puncher and just racking up points.
For sure, man. And I think something very fascinating is if you look at the time props for this fight goes the distance. Yes, minus 220, minus 300 at some other books. And then if you look at method of victory, again, I know you're not so much into the props. I'm a little bit more of a value hunter, like you said before, which I like that. I might have to steal that one. Wei Li at plus 150 to win by points, and Joanna at plus 200 to win by points. I don't think either of them get a finish. I'll be shocked because Joanna is also a very intelligent fighter. She really doesn't get rocked in any of her fights, with the exception of the Rose where she got caught. I think this is a decision. The round props, the over 2.5 is minus 310. I think this is a decision, and it's going to go to Wei Li.
Yeah, I think it's pretty wild the way they're hanging that line too. Like you get the over 2.5 at minus 300, but then you can get plus money for it to go the distance. Unless they're like really banking on a last half of the round finish there, I feel like you're getting some good value.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I recently rewatched this fight too, and it's something I do anytime there's a rematch. Mickey, is I like to go back and rewatch it, and sometimes you have a couple months, or in this case, a couple of years removed from the fact, and there's no hype, there's no bias. I don't think a split decision was warranted, man. I thought Wei Li won that 4-1. So I think this time it's gonna go a little bit similar to that.
You're not going to get any complaints from me when you're slandering UFC judging. So,
hey, I mean, that's a whole nother show we could do on that. Let's move on to the first of 2 title fights, and it is my girl, my favorite fighter in the UFC, Valentina Shevchenko, minus 630, minus 700 at some places. I mean, of all the champion fighters, Mickey, I've talked about this on my show many times. If you take the average odds of all the fighters, the opponents that they have, she's the biggest favorite of any champion in UFC history. And this is including Khabib. This is including the Rousey heyday, John Jones, whoever you could think of. Now, you could say, is the division so bad that she is that big a favorite? I wouldn't disagree with that. But it's also she's just been so dominant. And her opponent, Talia Santos, comes in at plus 400, plus 450 in some spots. How are you feeling about this fight? And are you on the dog here?
I am not on the dog on this one, but I don't think it's like necessarily out of the realm of possibility that Santos can win. I actually have an angle I like on this one. I think for the fight to not go the distance is a decent line here. You can get it at minus 110. It was in the plus money earlier in the week. I think, Shevchenko has definitely shown her ability to finish fights. She's been finishing people left and right. And, it's not that much of a price difference between her taking her inside the distance and just taking the fight to not go the distance. You're losing like 10, 20 cents of value on that. But, then you kind of have that insurance of if Santos was to get a finish of any sort. She got a submission in I think her last fight. Not traditionally a submission fighter, but again, you see like, you know, if something like that were to happen, you kind of got that to fall off on, and I don't mind giving up, you know, 10 to 20 cents value for that freak accident to happen there. So I like the whole fight just to go inside the distance there, like -110.
The one thing that scares me with Valentina, for as much as I love her as a fighter, is she does tend to play with her food a lot. And what I mean by that is she kind of cruises a lot of times. And there are certain fights where she could get the job done, and she kind of just like wants to get the ring time in the octagon. And I think eventually it's going to come back to bite her. I don't think it's going to be this fight. Valentina's also a jerk. And I mean that in the sense of like, she'll beat you at your own game, right? Like, remember against Andrade, it was like, well, she's going to be able to out wrestle Valentina. And then Valentina just took her down crucifix. That seems to be like her thing, the crucifix. She's gotten 3 finishes in the UFC with that. And I like where you're at with the inside the distance for this fight to end early, not to go the full. Valentina by knockout or KO is +250. If you think Valentina could submit her, +500. Like I said before, I'm not someone to lay -720. If you look at FanDuel, -690 on DraftKings, consensus -650. Like, I'm not doing that. So I'm going to be hunting for some props, and I like where your head's at with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty decent play here, and like you said, that's one of the reasons I have you know, the inside the distance instead of just taking Valentina just straight up on inside the distance for her, is because she does kind of play with her food, and like you said, I do think eventually it will, you know, bite her in the butt, but I don't know if it'll be this one. But getting that little insurance, you know, going from like a +110 to a -110, and you get like a whole nother fighter's opportunity to finish the fight. I'm okay with laying that, like giving up a little bit of value that was there.
Nah, man, I love that thinking, and the logic behind that is so true, because we're only talking about Valentina here, and maybe she gets caught in the round, the fight ends early. And if you're on your side, you'd be happy with that. But if you're on my side where you're taking all these Valentina props, you're gonna be miserable. So I do like that too. And at -108, -110, like you mentioned, that's not bad thinking. One thing I will say though for Talia Santos is I think she's being a little undervalued. +450 for her. I think this is the best real 125er that Valentina has fought. Remember, she fought Joanna. Joanna's a real 115. She's really a 115. Andrade, same thing. She's fought up at 125. Valentina has also beaten Juliana Pena in the past too, who is the champion at 135. But Talia Santos, I think, I wouldn't be opposed to taking her on the money line. Now, I'm not going to do it, but I wouldn't fault you if you did, because I think it's mispriced. I think she's the best fighter that has fought Valentina in this division and weight class.
Yeah, I mean, UFC is one of the sports that I think you can't go wrong with. Like, you just have to kind of take it on your chin sometimes, where like there's going to be mispriced lines, and sometimes you just got to bet them based off strictly the lines. I'm not going to do it in this one, but I agree with you. I think, you know, there's times where you'll see guys at, you know, -750, and, you know, maybe they should be maybe a -250 fighter. And it's like, okay, that is like, you're giving me way too much value. They probably win this fight, but I'm going to take the value here.
Oh, dude, we need to get that clipped and you post that and pin it to your profile, because that's the best way to describe betting UFC. I say that all the time. It's like I'll be asked, or I talk about on my show, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pick Valentina to win, but I might bet Talia Santos. And it's like, oh, you're hedging. It's like, no, it's two completely different conversations that we're having. You know, like I remember I was shooting this documentary for this sports betting video, and I said this exact same thing about Conor Poirier too. It's like Poirier was a 3-1 dog. It's like, wait, what are we doing? It should be closer to like -140 pick 'em kind of. So I thought Conor was going to win that fight. He ends up losing, but I bet on Poirier. So that logic it's a very good soundbite by you, dude. And I feel like not a lot of people talk about that.
Yeah, I don't think enough people have that kind of thinking when they're betting the UFC.
Main event time. This is a division in the 205 that used to be like the top division in the UFC, right? Yeah, John Jones all those years. Yeah, DC. nonetheless, ever since John Jones relinquished the belt and it was won by Blachowicz, and now it's Glover. It's like a little underwhelming, but I'm fascinated by this one. Glover, the underdog champion, plus 165, plus 170, as high as plus 185 at some places, coming in against Yuri Prochazka, who has 2 highlight reel finishes in his 2 fights in the UFC. He is the younger fighter by many, many years. Glover, the old, seasoned, grizzled vet, coming in as the defending champion. I got some stats for you here. His last 3 fights, Glover has cashed as a plus 240, plus 200, and a plus 215 underdog. And then this is the one that's the most. This is a trend of like 85%. You ready for this, Mickey?
I'm ready.
The underdog champion in the last 26 UFC fights. The underdog champion is 21-4-1. The one being a no contest with a Jones Cormier bout. So a lot of trends backing Glover here. I'm done with my rant and my little TED talk on this one. Take us away. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that, Yuri's a little quick to get a title shot here. Only 2 fights in the UFC, but I mean, he's got the resume, man. He's, 8, I think it was like 8 finishes or 8 wins in a row coming into the UFC, and then he finishes with, some pretty brutal knockouts, his first 2 fights, and they were both guys that were challengers for the belt. So, he's got the resume. I don't understand too much of the people that are questioning him getting this fight. But I think, especially like you said, the division's not what it used to be. We do have a guy, like Glover, and being the champ right now, he's a vet. That's exactly what he is. And he finds ways to win fights. And that's what he's been doing lately. He's maybe not the better fighter in every fight, but kind of like what we were just talking about in that last segment there, that's what UFC is. That's what betting UFC is. It's not always betting the better fighter. It's, finding the value. And there's definitely some value with Glover here. I'm leaning more towards the under in this one. And this line has been moving like crazy. The most recent prop that I was going to do, it's definitely gotten juiced up a little bit. It's for the fight to end in rounds 1, 2, and 3. I think that's all the way up to minus 250 on FanDuel now. But, you could get that a lot better price earlier in the week, but I still like that. Even at that number, it's pretty juicy, but I think this could definitely be an early finish here.
Yeah, the fight is favored to end inside the distance, minus 600. The round props, the under 1.5, I think is interesting at plus 108. Now, I think this fight ends in the first round. Just have a gut feeling. It's very similar. You know how I feel about this fight? The last pay-per-view, Gaethje Oliveira. I think the path to victories are the same. I think Glover, how I'm going to bet this fight is Glover by submission, and you could get that at plus 380. And then Yuri to win by knockout at minus 125. Now, here's the thing, right? Like Yuri to win this fight alone is minus 215. So he's not going to beat him by submission. He's not going to beat Glover by submission because no one has ever seen Yuri on the ground. But that's kind of how I'm approaching this fight. But I also like the dog here. I'm on Glover in this one. One last stand for the OG in the 205 division. I think Yuri's being jump started. And if I'm wrong, then Yuri's going to be a guy who's going to hold that title for ways to go. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about this one.
Yeah, I think if you're going to bet Yuri here, it's got to be, probably like a by knockout prop or something. I don't think there's that much value with him at the minus 200 something. Anywhere in the minus 200 is just, especially against a vet like Glover, he's still dangerous. We saw that in his last fight. People, if you looked all over Twitter, everybody was just saying about how it was just, an easy lock for. And everyone was fading him, and then he proved everyone wrong. Everyone went to bed mad, and now he's back. And it's kind of looking like it's going to be almost a similar result. Like everyone on Twitter is kind of, you got a couple guys here and there now, at least giving Glover a little bit of respect, but it seems like a majority of the people are backing Yuri in this one.
Yeah, that seems to be the big sentiment on social media. One thing that I don't like about Glover is that he's already hinted at, this might be his last fight. I don't like and granted, look, he's also in his 40s, so I get it. But I don't like it when you're half in, half out. That's not something where I'm not into. Like Nunez did that too, and then she lost to Pena. Ronda Rousey did that in the past. Connor's done that too. Like that's not kind of my thing. But then on the flip side, you look at Habib, who was just dominant throughout all of this. My official pick though is I think Glover retains his belt, and I think he does it by submission plus 380, but also at plus 164 for Glover to just win the fight outright. Yuri has a bad gas tank too. So maybe if Glover weathers that, first or second round storm, after that, he just cruise, do what he did to Anthony Smith, take him to the ground, just score points, ground and pound, and just grind out a decision. That wouldn't surprise me either. But I think Glover wins this fight. I feel pretty confident in it. And I don't like that he's the underdog in this as a champion. So I'm back in that trend too.
Yeah, I love the under 3, even though it's super juicy, because I think it's either Yuri gets a early knockout, or if it does get into late round 2, into round 3, I could see maybe Yuri does gas trying to get the knockout, trying to get something, and maybe there is a Glover late third round submission or something crazy. But so if that hits, then I think we'll both be happy.
You could get Yuri to win in round 1 plus 215. You could get Glover to win in round 1 plus 800. And then Yuri to win in round 2 at plus 450. Backing what you're saying that you like the unders, I think that's a pretty fun approach too. Especially when you could just get them to win that round as opposed to like method in round, which always sucks. Like, I don't know about you, but one time I had a guy to win in the first round by knockout, and he won in the first round by submission. I was like, I'm such an idiot for an extra 20 cents. Like, I just, what I mean? Like, this is where you get greedy, dude. Like, stop being greedy. But all right, let's get into the best bets, and then we'll wrap this up. What are your best bets for this pay-per-view?
Yeah, my best bets. I'm gonna lead it off with the first fight I talked about. We got women's MMA here. Silva Gomez Juarez money line minus 135. One of my favorite. It's my favorite straight bet for a women's fight in this card. And then throwing it down to the young prospect Jack Maddalena. I think this is a good spot for him. And like you said, this is going to be probably the last time we see him at the minus 155 range. I'm going to throw almost 2.5 units on that one there. And then last straight bet, I'm going to go Jake Matthews money, or not Jake Matthews, Sivchenko and Santos inside the distance.
I like that. I like that one a lot, dude. I like that one a lot. I think that's a good call on your end, and it's a little less stressful if like Santos does catch her in something where you don't need to be worried too much. Okay, for me, listen, when I give out best bets, I'm not someone that gives, I'm not laying juice on best bets, baby. I'm hunting for screenshot life. I want pluses. Jake Matthews by points plus 220. I really like that. This is a path to victory for me that I think is the only way he can win this fight at plus 220. My favorite prop, Malcoon by points plus 700. And then I'm with you on Jack, Wei Lee, and Valentina. A parlay of those three just to win outright. You get plus 240 on because you got that big favorite in Valentina. Those are the plays for me, man. And can I give you a parlay to maybe go on vacation next week?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So this one is 869 to 1.
Whew.
Malcoon and Matthews and Wei Lee to win by points. Jack Della by knockout. Glover inside the distance, baby. Plus 869 to 1.
I like it. Hopefully you can hit that vacation parlay and then maybe we won't have a show next week. You'll be in the Caribbean or something.
There'll just be a different backdrop in the background, bro. I'll be there and we'll just be a couple of margaritas on the beach giving out crazy plays. Mickey, this was fun, man. I'm excited for this pay-per-view. Love chopping it up with you. I like that you inspired me on one of those bets. I will get in on that. And we'll do this again next time.
For sure. Hopefully a great card.
Later, everybody.